3. That is the number of forensic pathways that are currently running in parallel inside the laboratory system that the FBI has access to in the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. Not 1, not 2. 3 independent scientific processes, each capable of producing a result entirely on its own, each capable of doing what 55 days of tips, searches, interviews, and public pressure have not yet produced. The name of the person who entered Nancy Guthrie's home in the pre-dawn hours of February 1st, 2026, and took her from everything she knew. 3 forensic pathways. And the one that investigators, analysts, and former FBI specialists are watching most closely right now is not the one that generates the most headlines. It is not the doorbell camera footage that has been studied by millions of people. And it is not the physical evidence visible to the naked eye. It is a process that happens entirely inside a laboratory. A process that most people have heard mentioned in connection with this case, but that almost nobody has fully explained. Forensic genealogy, the technology that identified the Golden State Killer after more than 40 years of investigation. The technology that led investigators to the suspect in the Idaho student murders within weeks of the crime. The technology that is right now, according to confirmed reporting from CBS News, NBC News, and the Pima County Sheriff's Department, actively being applied to the unknown DNA recovered from Nancy Guthrie's property. This is not a video about who took Nancy Guthrie. No charges have been filed. No suspect has been publicly identified. The investigation is active as of this week, and according to the Pima County Sheriff's Department, and law enforcement has not released the identity of anyone connected to this crime. But this is a video about the science, a result that former FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer stated publicly. This case, she wrote, is not cold. It is, in her words, red hot behind the scenes. And what is generating that heat is not something laboratory. Right now, let's start there. Before we examine the science, before we walk through every step of what forensic genealogy is, and what it is capable of producing in this specific investigation, we need to understand who this case is actually about. Because the moment Nancy Guthrie becomes a forensic abstraction, the moment she becomes a DNA profile or important thing about everything we are about to examine. Nancy long public family statements adored her. She remained mentally sharp and cognitively clear well into her 80s. Her daughter Savannah, the co-host of NBC's Today Show, described her in a public interview with Hoda Kotb on March 25th of this year as, in her words, a kind, faithful, loyal, fiercely loving woman of goodness and light. And that is the person at the center of this investigation. That is who was taken from her home in the Catalina Foothills area north of Tucson, Arizona, sometime in the pre-dawn hours of February 1st, 2026, according to the official timeline established by the Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI. She was last seen on the evening of January 31st. She was reported missing the following morning when she did not appear for her regular Sunday church attendance. Authorities believe she was removed from her home against her will. Drops of her blood were found on the front porch of her residence, according to confirmed reporting from multiple national news outlets. Her essential medications, including management for conditions related to her pacemaker, were left behind on her kitchen counter, accessible and visible. And according to what Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed publicly in his press conferences, she left without her phone. She left without anything that would sustain her outside her home. The person who took her spent 41 minutes inside that residence, according to the digital record established by investigators. 41 documented time-stamped minutes in the home of an 84-year-old woman with mobility limitations. And when that person left, they left behind something they did not intend to leave. DNA, unknown DNA, found at Nancy Guthrie's property, that does not belong to Nancy or to anyone with established legitimate access to her home, according to the official statement released by the Pima County Sheriff's Department on February 13th. Yosin, that DNA, that fragment of biological material left behind at the scene, is what this entire video is about. Before we go any deeper into the science and what it means for this specific investigation, make sure you subscribe to The Buried Case right now and hit that notification bell. Here at this channel, we do not speculate. We examine what the documented record actually shows. We follow the confirmed official statements. We apply the investigative frameworks that experienced law enforcement uses, and we explain them in a way the public can actually follow. New investigations and case deep dives every single week. If you believe this case is straightforward, if you think the evidence has already told you everything there is to know, stay with this video. Because the most important development in the Nancy Guthrie investigation is not the one getting the most coverage. It is the one happening in a laboratory right now. Hit the like button and tell me in the comments, do you think the DNA result will come before or after a suspect is publicly identified? I read every single response. Now, let us talk about what forensic genealogy actually is, because the term gets used constantly in connection with this case and in connection with other high-profile investigations, but it is rarely explained with the precision that allows a person to understand why investigators are so focused on it, what it can and cannot do, and specifically what it means that it is being applied to the evidence in the Nancy Guthrie case right now. This matters. And understanding this process is the difference between following a headline and actually understanding what the investigation is building toward. So let us build it from the foundation. Every human being carries in every cell of their body a unique genetic sequence. That sequence, your DNA, is yours and yours alone. No other person on the planet shares your complete genetic profile. But here is what matters specifically for criminal investigation. You did not build your genetic sequence from nothing. You inherited it from your parents, who inherited portions of it from their parents, who inherited portions from theirs. Your DNA is, in a very real scientific sense, a family document, a biological record of your lineage, and that means something critical for forensic science. If investigators have your DNA profile, they do not only have you, they have a thread that connects to every biological relative you have ever had, going back multiple generations. Brothers and sisters share approximately 50% of their DNA with each other. First cousins share approximately 12 to 15%. Second cousins share approximately 3%. These percentages decrease as the relationship becomes more distant, but they never reach zero among biological relatives, which means that even a relatively distant cousin, someone who has never met you, someone who may not even know your name, carries genetic markers that link them to you. And if that cousin has submitted their DNA to a genealogical database, one of the consumer services that has become enormously popular over the past decade for people searching their ancestry, then investigators who have your DNA can find that cousin. And from that cousin, they can begin building a family tree. A tree that, branch by branch and generation by generation, narrows down to you. That is the core principle of forensic genealogy. The process that has been formally described by the FBI as investigative genetic genealogy. And it is not theoretical. It is a proven, not experimental, It is a proven, repeatedly validated scientific methodology that has produced results in some of the most difficult investigations in the history of American law enforcement. The most famous example, the one that brought this technology into public awareness, is the identification of the Golden State Killer. Joseph James DeAngelo terrorized California for more than a decade in the 1970s and 1980s. He was connected to at least 13 murders and dozens of sexual assaults. He evaded identification for more than 40 years. Law enforcement had his DNA. They simply could not match it to anyone in their databases. In 2017, cold case investigator Paul Holes and forensic genealogist Barbara Ray Venter applied the then-emerging technology of investigative genetic genealogy to DeAngelo's DNA profile. They uploaded it to a genealogical database. They found distant relatives, people who had submitted their own DNA for ancestry purposes and who shared genetic markers with the unknown suspect. From those relatives, they built family trees. They worked forward through generations. They identified candidates. They narrowed those candidates through traditional investigative methods. And in April 2018, they arrested Joseph James DeAngelo, then 72 years old, at his home in Citrus Heights, California. He had been hiding in plain sight for decades. Forensic genealogy found him in months. The guilty plea came in 2020. He is now serving multiple consecutive life sentences. The technology worked, and then it worked again. In November 2022, 4 University of Idaho students, Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogan, Zana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, were killed inside their off-campus house in Moscow, Idaho. The case generated enormous national attention. Investigators had DNA evidence from the scene. They initially had no suspect. The CODIS database, the FBI's combined DNA index system, which we will discuss in detail shortly, returned no match. Investigators turned to forensic genealogy. Within weeks, that process had produced a lead that pointed toward a doctoral student in criminology at Washington State University named Brian Koberger. Traditional investigative methods confirmed the connection. He was arrested in Pennsylvania on December 30th, 2022, 44 days after the murders. He has since been formally charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. The case against him includes DNA evidence, cell phone location data, and vehicle identification. Forensic genealogy was not the only tool, but according to public reporting from multiple outlets, including CBS News, it was a critical part of the lead that broke the case open. 44 days. Just that is what forensic genealogy produced in a case where the DNA database returned no initial match. Now let us talk about the specific process in more technical detail, because understanding it precisely is what allows you to understand what is happening right now in the Nancy Guthrie investigation. When investigators have DNA from a crime scene, the first thing they do is build what is called a genetic profile. This is not your complete DNA sequence. That would be enormously expensive and time-consuming to produce in full. Instead, investigators focus on specific markers within the DNA, locations in the genetic code that vary between individuals in predictable ways. These markers are cataloged and compared. The profile produced is unique enough to distinguish one individual from any other users, but it also contains enough information about inheritance patterns to establish biological relationships. The profile is then run through CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System is the FBI's National Forensic DNA Database. It It contains genetic profiles from convicted offenders, from arrestees in many states, from crime scenes where DNA has been collected, and from missing persons and unidentified remains. CODIS contains tens of millions of profiles. It is the first stop for any forensic DNA investigation in the United States. When a scene sample matches a CODIS profile, investigators often have their identification quickly. When it does not match, when it returns what investigators call a cold hit, or more formally, a no-match result, the investigation moves to the next step. In the Nancy Guthrie case, which the CODIS result has been publicly discussed. Reporting from multiple outlets, confirmed by official statements from the Pima County Sheriff's Department, established that the DNA recovered from Nancy Guthrie's property did not return an immediate identifying match through the standard database comparison process. This was reported as a significant development in the investigation. And in one sense, it was, because it meant the suspect did not have a prior criminal record that had resulted in DNA collection. But a CODIS no-match is not the end of the forensic road. It is, in many ways, the beginning of a different and more sophisticated process. Because when CODIS returns no match, investigators with the FBI's resources can pursue what was described publicly by the Pima County Sheriff's Department and confirmed by CBS News, reporting on March 17th, as forensic genetic genealogy. The CBS News report specifically named this technique and cited experts explaining what it involves and how long it takes. And understanding that timeline is essential for understanding where the Nancy Guthrie investigation stands right now. After CODIS returns no direct match, the next step in forensic genealogy is uploading the crime scene DNA profile to consumer genealogy databases. The two largest databases used for this purpose are GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA. GEDmatch is a platform where people voluntarily upload their DNA results from consumer services like Ancestry DNA and 23andMe for the purpose of finding relatives. Family Tree DNA has a law enforcement access program that allows FBI investigators to search its database with crime scene profiles under specific protocols. These databases contain millions of profiles from people who submitted their DNA voluntarily for ancestry purposes. People who have no connection to any criminal investigation. People who uploaded their DNA because they wanted to find their biological family, trace their heritage, or discover their ethnic origins. And by doing so, they created a genetic roadmap that, in cases where their relatives commit crimes, can lead investigators directly back through the family tree to the person responsible. It is worth pausing on the scale of this. Consumer genealogy databases have grown to extraordinary size over the past decade, when estimates from genetics researchers place the total number of profiles in major consumer databases at well above 30 million in the United States alone. What that means, according to published research by population geneticists at MIT and other institutions, is that a person of European American ancestry has a greater than 90% probability of being identifiable through a third cousin or closer match in a database of that size. The probability decreases for individuals of other ancestries whose communities have historically been less represented in consumer databases, but the gap has been narrowing as these databases have grown. The practical implication is significant. In the United States today, most people, regardless of whether they have ever submitted their own DNA, are genetically traceable through the submissions of relatives who have used consumer ancestry services. The actual forensic genealogy process, once the crime scene profile is uploaded to a database and relatives are identified, involves work that is painstaking, methodical, and time-intensive. This is the part that most media coverage glosses over, and it is the part that explains why the process takes months rather than days. When investigators find a match in a consumer database, say a second or third cousin of the actual suspect, they do not immediately have the suspect's name. They have a DNA profile that belongs to someone related to the suspect. From that starting point, investigators and specialized genealogical analysts begin building a family tree. They work backward in time to find the common ancestor shared between the database match and the unknown suspect. Then they work forward from that common ancestor, tracing all the descendants, all the branches of the family, until they arrive at individuals who fit the profile of the suspect. Age, geography, gender, all of these factors are used to narrow the candidate pool. In the Golden State Killer investigation, this process involved building family trees with thousands of individuals before the investigators identified a manageable pool of candidates. It required traditional genealogical research, reviewing birth records, death certificates, marriage records, census data, newspaper archives. It required cross-referencing geographic information to identify which branches of the family had lived in the areas where the crimes occurred. And it required, ultimately, traditional law enforcement investigation to confirm or eliminate the individuals on the final candidate list. A discarded coffee cup or a piece of trash retrieved from a suspect's garbage can provide a DNA comparison sample without a warrant. If that sample matches the crime scene profile, the identification is confirmed. An arrest follows. That is the full arc of the process. And that arc, according to forensic science experts cited by CBS News in their reporting on March 17th, takes time. As expert Michael Leasing told CBS News, the process of forensic genealogy can take a while. And he specifically noted that investigators might identify multiple people within the same DNA family who could potentially be suspects, each of whom requires independent investigation. Understanding that timeline allows you to understand something important about the Nancy Guthrie case that has generated frustration in public commentary. The fact that the investigation has now been active for more than 55 days without a publicly announced arrest. The absence of a publicly announced arrest does not mean the investigation has stalled. In cases where forensic genealogy is the primary forensic pathway, the investigation is often most active precisely when it appears most quiet from the outside. Because the work is happening in laboratories, in genealogical databases, in the analysis of family trees, like in the tracing of distant relatives, none of which is visible to the public, none of which produces press conferences or dramatic announcements, and all of which must be completed before investigators can take the next step. Former FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffin-Daffer addressed this dynamic explicitly in her public statement this week. She wrote that just because we do not see what the FBI is investigating does not mean they are not actively working. She described investigators as, in her phrasing, drinking from a fire hose with more investigative leads than most cases ever have. That assessment, from someone with direct professional experience in federal investigations, reflects something important about what the evidence in this case represents. The DNA is there. The process is running. The question is not whether the technology can work. The question is how long the specific process takes in this specific case, and what investigators will do the moment it produces a result. Now let us connect the forensic science to the specific evidence that exists in the Nancy Guthrie investigation. Because understanding the process abstractly is one thing. Understanding what it means that this process is being applied to the specific biological material recovered from Nancy Guthrie's property is something else entirely. Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed in their official statement released on February 13th that DNA other than Nancy Guthrie's and those in close contact with her has been collected from the property. The statement said, according to multiple outlets that reported it verbatim, that investigators are working to identify who it belongs to. And then, and this is the part that experienced investigators immediately recognized as significant, the statement added one more sentence. We are not disclosing where that DNA was located. That deliberate withholding of the location is not an oversight. Law enforcement does not withhold the location of recovered DNA from public disclosure unless that location carries investigative significance that could compromise ongoing work. The specific placement of biological material inside a crime scene tells investigators things about how the crime occurred, how the space was used, where the individual was during the event. Information that, if disclosed publicly, could alert a suspect about what law enforcement knows and allow them to construct explanations in advance. The fact that the location of the DNA is being actively protected by the Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI tells you something about what that location reveals. It is not incidental. It is specific enough to matter strategically. What else do we know about the physical evidence collected during this investigation that may intersect with the forensic genealogy process? According to confirmed reporting from multiple outlets, several gloves were found in the vicinity of Nancy Guthrie's home during the investigation. The Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed publicly that gloves found approximately 2 miles from the home were initially submitted for DNA testing. According to reporting from Fox 10 Phoenix and other outlets, the DNA from those specific gloves was eventually traced to a local restaurant worker who, according to the Sheriff's Department's statement on their official social media account, is not part of this investigation. That result, while disappointing from the perspective of immediately identifying a suspect, is itself forensically meaningful. It demonstrates that the laboratory infrastructure being used in this investigation is capable of producing identifications from physical evidence. The gloves yielded a result. That result eliminated one individual. But according to the same reporting, other gloves that were found are still being tested at a private laboratory in Florida, according to Fox 10 Phoenix. Those results have not been publicly released as of this week. What investigators know about gloves, specifically from the behavioral record of residential intrusion cases, is significant. These gloves are worn precisely to prevent the transfer of fingerprints and DNA to surfaces that would be touched during the crime. But gloves worn during physical activity, during a 41-minute operation that required moving through a residential property, collect biological material on their interior surface, sweat, skin cells, the microscopic biological material that a person's body produces continuously and that concentrates on any surface in sustained, close contact with the skin. The interior of a glove worn for an extended period of physical activity can yield DNA of sufficient quality to produce a profile that can be run through CODIS, and if CODIS returns no match, through a forensic genealogy database. The gloves still being tested in Florida are, according to confirmed reporting, part of the active forensic process in this case. And then there is the doorbell camera. The investigation into the Nancy Guthrie case has produced, in the confirmed public record, at least 2 dates on which a person appeared at or near her front door in the weeks before and on the night of her disappearance. The first appearance that has been publicly discussed occurred on January 11th, 2026, 3 weeks before Nancy Guthrie was taken. According to a source cited by CNN, the masked person seen on the doorbell camera footage the morning of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance was also recorded at her doorstep on that earlier night. The release of an image from what appears to be a different night from the primary event was, according to sources cited by CNN, and something that surprised the local and federal investigators on the ground, because they had hoped to keep that detail confidential. The investigative significance of a January 11th appearance is substantial. If the individual who ultimately entered Nancy Guthrie's home on February 1st had also been present at her doorstep 3 weeks earlier, that establishes a pattern of surveillance, a documented return visit to the target location that is entirely inconsistent with opportunistic or random criminal targeting. And according to confirmed reporting from NBC News, investigators are also asking neighbors about footage from January 24th, a week before the disappearance. Multiple visits to the same location, documented across multiple dates, prior to the event itself, is the kind of behavioral record that experienced investigators use to establish premeditation. The individual appearing in that footage, the masked person confirmed by the FBI's forensic specialists as a male of approximately 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10 inches in height, of average build, carrying a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack, is described by the FBI as a suspect, not as a person of interest, not as an unidentified individual, as a suspect. The FBI's Forensic Video Analysis Unit, which erected a white forensic tent at the property in February, according to Fox News digital reporting with photographs, produced a physical description through a process described by former FBI Executive Assistant Director Joshua Schooley as extremely accurate, according to CNN's reporting of his assessment. The height is not an estimate. It is a forensic measurement derived from calibrated instruments applied to the actual scene. And that physical description, that profile, is what investigators are trying to connect to the biological material the suspect left behind. Let us talk specifically about the Walmart backpack, because it is a detail that has received significant attention, and the reason it matters forensically is precise and worth understanding in full. The black Ozark Trail hiker pack, confirmed by the FBI's official description as a 25-liter capacity pack, is, as its brand designation indicates, a private label product sold exclusively through Walmart retail locations and online channels. And every Ozark Trail product sold at Walmart is part of Walmart's proprietary brand. It is not available through third-party retailers. That exclusivity matters because it means every transaction involving this specific product passes through Walmart's retail infrastructure. Credit card purchases create transaction records. Walmart's loyalty program creates purchase histories. In-store security cameras document the moment of purchase. Online orders create shipping records and account histories. If the backpack seen in the doorbell camera footage was purchased at a Walmart location and given its exclusive brand status, it almost certainly was. The pathway from that physical object to its purchaser may exist in retail data that investigators with appropriate legal process can access. The FBI's ability to obtain retail transaction records through subpoena and other legal mechanisms is well documented. The question in any specific case is whether the purchase was made in cash or by card, and whether the relevant security footage has been preserved. Cash transactions are harder to trace through transaction records, but they are not invisible. The point-of-sale terminal logs the item, the date, the location, and the time. And every Walmart parking lot and store interior is covered by security cameras that capture the appearance of every customer. A specific purchase of a specific product at a specific time from a specific location, cross-referenced with the physical description produced by the FBI's Forensic Video Analysis, is the kind of investigative thread that has produced identifications in cases with far less initial evidence than this one. Here is something that most coverage of this case has not adequately explained. The forensic genealogy process and the traditional investigative process, the backpack records, the retail data, the neighborhood camera footage, the cell tower analysis, are not mutually exclusive. They are running simultaneously. This is what former FBI agent Coffindaffer was describing when she used the phrase "drinking from a fire hose." Investigators do not pause the traditional evidence trail while they wait for a laboratory result. They pursue every thread at the same time. The Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed this week, according to reporting from Newsweek, that agents have returned to Nancy Guthrie's Catalina Foothills neighborhood to ask fresh questions about a nearby property that was vacated shortly before her disappearance, and about several homes under construction in the area. Investigators have reportedly requested the names of contractors and workers active in the neighborhood in the days and weeks leading up to February 1st. That investigative activity, canvassing contractors, requesting work records, identifying who had legitimate professional access to the neighborhood during the relevant time period, is a traditional investigative thread running entirely parallel to the forensic laboratory work, and it connects directly to a detail that emerged early in the investigation and was noted in reporting by multiple outlets. A neighbor had observed that Nancy Guthrie's roof appeared recently and unusually well maintained, cleaner than neighboring properties that had accumulated typical seasonal weathering. That observation pointed toward recent contractor activity, work that would have given a professional worker legitimate reasons to be at or near the property, opportunities to observe security installations, and multiple return visits that could have built familiarity with patterns, routines, and vulnerabilities that the 41-minute operation required. Investigators were asking about contractors from the beginning. They are apparently still asking. That thread has not been resolved publicly, and if the DNA recovered from the property matches an individual identified through the contractor investigation, does the forensic genealogy result and the traditional investigative result converge on the same person, which is precisely the kind of multi-pathway confirmation that prosecutors use to build the strongest possible case. Let us address something that has come up repeatedly in public discussion of this investigation: the question of whether the ransom demands change the analytical framework in any meaningful way. The confirmed record of the ransom communications in the Nancy Guthrie case is specific and publicly documented. A ransom demand of $6 million in Bitcoin with a deadline was delivered to a local Tucson television station. Multiple deadlines passed, according to the documented timeline, without the kind of follow-through and continued negotiation pressure that professional ransom operations require to function. No acceptable proof of life was provided, according to law enforcement sources who spoke to reporters covering the investigation. The absence of proof of life is not a minor procedural gap. In any legitimate ransom operation, any situation in which a kidnapper genuinely holds a victim alive and expects to receive payment in exchange for their return, proof of life is not optional. It is the fundamental transaction of the negotiation. The family needs ongoing evidence that the victim is alive. The kidnapper needs to provide that evidence to maintain the family's willingness to pay. Former FBI Special Agent Catherine Schweit, who investigated a comparable case involving an elderly victim, made this point directly in public media analysis of this investigation. If the goal is genuinely to collect ransom, and consistent and aggressive communication with the family from the beginning is the operational necessity. The absence of consistent proof of life communication does not fit the operational pattern of kidnapping genuinely motivated by financial extraction. Former FBI Special Agent Harry Trombitas made a similar point in analysis cited by Yahoo News, stating that while ransom could be a motive, it is, in his words, appearing less and less likely. The evidence pattern in the ransom communications is one of the things Sheriff Nanos was briefed on in the first hours of the investigation, and it is one of the reasons he made the decision, which he acknowledged publicly was unusual, to involve homicide investigators in what was officially still being treated as a missing persons case. Just that decision, made by a veteran sheriff who understood what the evidence he was reviewing was indicating, reflects something about the professional assessment of the evidence from the very beginning, and it directly affects the forensic strategy. Investigators who build a case with homicide standards from day one collect and preserve evidence with chain of custody protocols that would survive the most rigorous prosecutorial standard. Every DNA sample, every camera image, every piece of physical evidence collected in this investigation was handled from the beginning according to standards designed for the most serious possible charges. That is what Sheriff Nanos's early decision ensured. Let us now talk about the investigative activity of February 13th, because it is the most significant visible movement in this case, and an understanding it in context of the forensic process we have been discussing is important. On the evening of February 13th, multiple agencies converged on a location near Orange Grove Road and North 1st Avenue, approximately 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. According to Fox News reporting, citing a local law enforcement source, 3 individuals were detained in connection with the investigation. A silver Range Rover was photographed being searched in the parking lot of a restaurant near 1st Avenue and River Road, according to CNN producers on the ground who documented investigators photographing the vehicle's interior and trunk before it was towed. The Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed on their official social media that law enforcement activity was occurring at the location, and multiple agencies were present: the Pima County Sheriff's Department, the FBI, and multiple municipal police departments, according to what reporters documented at the scene. The operation lasted approximately 4 hours, according to CNN's reporting, before the area reopened. No arrests were announced following the detentions. The Pima County Sheriff's Department stated in their official communications that they do not release information about individuals who are detained and later released without charges, which is consistent with constitutional protections that apply to anyone in that situation. What the February 13th activity represents in the context of the forensic processes we have been discussing is significant. A warrant requires a judge to determine that probable cause has been established before it can be signed. Near the scale of the multi-agency response suggests coordination between local and federal investigators at a level that reflected specific intelligence about the location, the vehicle, or the individuals. Whether that activity was directly connected to the DNA analysis, to the contractor investigation, to the retail data trail, or to another thread entirely is not publicly known, but it represented the most concentrated visible investigative action since the surveillance footage was first recovered. And it occurred against a backdrop of simultaneous forensic processes that, as of this week, are still producing results. Now let us build the working analytical frameworks that the evidence in this case supports. These are not conclusions. They are the analytical structures that experienced investigators use to organize evidence into coherent patterns. The same frameworks that law enforcement applies when evidence is developing and the full picture has not yet been confirmed. They are presented here as tools for understanding the investigation, not as judgments about any specific individual's guilt or responsibility. 3 frameworks have emerged from the documented evidence record in this case, and what they share. the single prerequisite that all three of them require, is more significant than their differences. The first framework is what investigators would describe as a planned operation that encountered complications. Under this framework, the individual who entered Nancy Guthrie's home on February 1st had identified her as a target for financial gain. The knowledge of her daughter Savannah's prominence, her national television platform, her public visibility, the financial resources that visibility might imply, represented, in the criminal calculus of whoever planned this, an opportunity worth pursuing. The planning that preceded the operation was real and documented. The security camera was addressed. The approach was timed to the pre-dawn hours. Equipment, including the backpack visible in the surveillance footage, was brought to the scene. The timing coincided precisely with the window during which Savannah was scheduled to travel internationally for NBC's coverage of the Winter Olympics, a commitment determined months in advance through complex network logistics, known within her professional and social circles well before it became a public scheduling fact. And under this first framework, the ransom communications reflect a genuine, if poorly executed attempt to extract payment. The multiple deadlines that passed without follow-through reflect the complications that arose when the operation did not unfold as planned. When law enforcement response proved more sophisticated than anticipated, when the communication strategy became untenable. This framework explains the initial ransom demands and accounts for some of the earlier communication patterns. What it cannot fully explain is the confidence evident in 41 minutes of documented presence inside the residence. Inexperienced operators do not spend 41 minutes in a target location. They do not know which interior cameras to address with the specificity that the evidence suggests. The detailed operational knowledge that the physical evidence reflects exists in uncomfortable tension with the amateur quality of the ransom communications under this first framework. The second analytical framework focuses on what investigators would describe as a planned operation in which the financial element of the narrative served a different purpose than genuine ransom extraction. Under this framework, what happened to Nancy Guthrie occurred for reasons that are not fully visible in the ransom communications, reasons rooted in personal history, circumstance, or motivation that has not been publicly established. The ransom element under this framework was not the operational objective. No, it was the narrative cover, a construction designed to point the investigation in a specific direction and away from the actual circumstances of what occurred. This framework accounts for the evidence that the first framework struggles to explain. The 41 minutes of confident, documented presence reflects familiarity with the interior of the home that cannot be acquired through brief external surveillance. The addressing of security systems reflects knowledge of which specific equipment needed to be managed, knowledge that comes from prior access, not from street-level observation. The timing of the operation on the specific weekend of a close family member's previously planned international travel reflects awareness of schedule information that was not public knowledge in any specific detail. And the medications left behind, the physiological stabilizers that any genuine kidnapping operation motivated by ransom would require in order to maintain the viability of the person being held, are, under this second framework, explicable in a way they are not under the first. If the timeline of the operation did not extend to where medication maintenance would become operationally relevant, the medications were not needed. They were not taken because they served no purpose in the actual plan. Under this framework, the ransom communications were theater. They were elements of a constructed narrative designed to be received, to be reported, to shape the investigative response. Multiple deadlines passing without follow-through under this framework that reflects not operational failure, but the absence of operational necessity, because the deadlines were never the point. The third analytical framework does not contradict either of the first two. It is an explanatory layer that can be applied to both. It addresses the question of how the specific knowledge evident in the operation was acquired. The 41 minutes, the camera knowledge, the schedule awareness, the intimate familiarity with the property layout. That level of knowledge develops through proximity, through legitimate access to a person's life, through the kind of relationships and professional interactions that place individuals inside homes, inside schedules, inside security systems, in ways that are unremarkable at the time, but that, in retrospect, can be seen as the source of the operational intelligence a crime of this precision required. Contractors who work on a property learn its layout from the inside. Service providers who make regular visits observe security systems as part of navigating their work environment. Social contacts who spend time in a home develop familiarity with patterns, routines, and vulnerabilities. Information shared casually in the context of any of these relationships, a comment about an upcoming trip, a mention of a regular schedule, an observation about a security installation, can, in the hands of someone who intends to use it, become operational intelligence. Investigators have, according to confirmed reporting from Newsweek and Fox 10 Phoenix, been actively pursuing this thread, asking specifically about contractors and workers who were active in the neighborhood in the days and weeks before February 1st. The neighbor's observation about the unusually clean and recently maintained roof at Nancy Guthrie's property was noted early in the investigation. Investigative attention to nearby construction and a recently vacated property is confirmed in reporting from this week. This third framework does not resolve the question of who is responsible. It narrows the investigative aperture to the specific category of relationship that the evidence suggests was the source of the knowledge the operation required. Here is what connects all three of these frameworks. All three of them, regardless of which one most accurately describes what actually happened, require, as a prerequisite, as detailed prior knowledge of Nancy Guthrie's home, life, and vulnerabilities. The frameworks differ on motive, on the nature of what ultimately occurred, and on the specific purpose of the ransom communications, but they all require someone with insider access to information that strangers cannot possess through casual observation. That shared prerequisite is the investigative anchor. It is what the DNA evidence, the forensic genealogy process, the contractor investigation, and the retail data trail are all building toward: the identification of the specific individual whose access to that knowledge is documented in the biological material left behind at the scene. Step back now from the individual threads, the forensic laboratory processing unknown DNA, the forensic genealogy application running through consumer databases, the contractor records being gathered in the Catalina Foothills neighborhood, the gloves still being tested at a private facility in Florida, the cell tower data from the pre-dawn hours of February 1st, the neighborhood footage from a month-long window being reviewed frame by frame. Every one of these processes is independent. Every one of them is capable, on its own, of producing a result. Every one of them is, as of this week, still active. Former FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer described this case as red-hot behind the scenes, not stalled, not cold, but generating investigative material at a volume she described as more than most cases ever have. The forensic timelines, in cases where genealogy has been successfully applied, have historically been measured in weeks to months. In the Idaho murders, a lead emerged in 44 days. In the Golden State Killer investigation, The process produced an identification in months. The specific timeline in the Nancy Guthrie case depends on factors not publicly known. The quality of the DNA profile, the number of database matches, the depth of family trees that must be traced. But the biological material is in the laboratory. The process is running. And the result, according to every expert who has spoken publicly about this case, could come any day. Nancy Long Guthrie was born on January 27, 1942. She is 84 years old. She raised her children in Arizona. She attended church. She maintained connections with her community. She was described by her daughter, Savannah, in a public interview on March 25th, as a kind, faithful, loyal, fiercely loving woman of goodness and light. Someone who knew her home, her schedule, and her vulnerabilities entered that home in the pre-dawn hours of February 1st and took her from everything she had built over 84 years. They left biological material behind. At a location, investigators have specifically chosen not to disclose publicly. At a scene treated from the first hours as a homicide investigation by a veteran sheriff who understood immediately what the evidence was indicating. That biological material is in a laboratory right now. It has been run through CODIS. It has been submitted, according to CBS News and the Pima County Sheriff's Department, to the forensic genetic genealogy process that identified the Golden State Killer and broke the Idaho murders case. The process is active. The family is offering $1 million for information leading to Nancy's recovery. The FBI is offering $100,000 in addition. The investigation is not fading. Nancy Guthrie deserves to come home. Her family deserves answers. The evidence deserves to produce justice. The investigation continues. This investigation was presented with complete respect for Nancy Guthrie and her family. Every analysis in this video is grounded in official law enforcement statements, confirmed reporting from national news organizations, and the investigative frameworks that experienced professionals use to examine evidence patterns. The theories discussed here are working analytical frameworks, not conclusions about any specific individual's guilt. If you have any information related to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, please contact the FBI tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI or the Pima County Sheriff's Department tip line at 5203-514900. If this case matters to you, subscribe to The Buried Case and hit that notification bell. We will continue tracking this investigation as the forensic results develop and as the evidence moves toward the resolution it is building toward. Tell me in the comments, which forensic pathway do you believe will produce the first result in this case, and why? I read every response. The investigation continues.